Hey guys, it's Mizzy, and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world. In this episode of Who Murdered Brandon Embry, we are covering the investigation, how it was improperly handled, how there was hardly any investigating done, and why was the case closed? Why was the evidence destroyed? Please watch this and share Brandon's story because his case needs to get out there. His case needs to be reopened. So who murdered Brandon Embry? Now, what happened? Your husband went to go clean the crime scene because he wanted to kind of shelter you so you didn't have to see what had happened at his apartment?
Yes, he told me that there was a lot of blood inside the apartment, and he wanted him and his brother were there, and there was also a lot of water. So they were just cleaning and everything. And something just told me, even though like I was definitely like feeling the grief and everything, those were his belongings, those were his things. And I felt like, just as a custodian of my son's belongings, I needed to go to make sure everything was taken care of the right way.
Yeah.
So I pull up, and they told me there was a lot of blood, and so I just kind of like took that deep breath and kind of prepared myself that I was going to see that. And I go in, and I could see like they'd already been like working and cleaning stuff out. And I go back into the bedroom, and the first thing that I see is his head print on the floor. And that was really kind of large. That was hard to miss with that. And
Yeah.
but they're like, I think they had already taken the mattress. I can't remember if they had taken it outside or if it was just like pulled up, like standing up. But I noticed like the blood that's marked on the wall. I'm just kind of looking around, and I do see like blood on the window seal. I go in the bathroom, and then when I go in the bathroom, that's when it hit me that something happened, like that this was, I really just describe it that I felt like something evil had happened. When I went in that bathroom, the mirror was busted. Had been like, I'm just looking around. The fixtures are torn off the wall. The toilet is ripped up out of the ground. The heavy tank, the water tank, the seats were torn off,
Yeah.
but the water tank that is on the back, that thing is so heavy, and it was broke in half. There was only a half a piece in the bathroom, and the shower curtain, shower rod are gone. And I'm just looking at things, and I'm just like, yeah, something is really wrong here. Something very bad happened. And then I look at the walls, and I see the blood on the walls. The drive wall is caved in. But I look closer at that blood, and there's like water running through it, like where spray or something had been running through the blood. And it's a pretty big portion of blood. And I'm like, okay, somebody was like cleaning up. And that's when I'm like, we have got to call the detectives back over here, because they didn't mention that to me.
Yeah.
But to me, that's looks like someone was cleaning up a murder scene. They're washing the blood off the walls.
Yeah.
And so we call the detectives back over. The male detective, Detective Suddeth, he comes first. And then he said his partner was on the way. And
hold on 1 second. Detective Johnson is the female detective?
Yes.
And the other detective was the male detective?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we want to just like bring this stuff to their attention. When I saw the stuff in the bathroom, I told my husband we needed to stop what they were doing. I asked him about the bed. I think okay, so the mattress was still in there, and I asked him where the bedding was. And I'm assuming that the police had taken the bedding with them for any like DNA evidence, like to see who was there, that kind of thing. And my husband said, no, we threw it out. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, you need to go get it right now. And I kept asking where the shower curtain was too. Because with what happened in the bathroom, I'm figuring there's probably some kind of, blood spatter. And I'm like assuming that the police took the shower curtain, like for the stuff to be analyzed. Well, he goes and gets the, like the comforter, the sheet, I spread them out and there's blood all over them. And, my husband had told me about the water had been running and they had, bagged everything up, and just because everything was so waterlogged. But even with all that water, you could still see all of the blood that had been in that comforter and on the sheets and stuff like that.
And that's something the police should have taken. They should have taken the mattress. They should have taken the broken toilet, the top of the toilet that was broken. That should have all been taken for evidence.
Because it also for like crime scene reconstruction, because what I still need to do is to maybe like look at the sheet and try to line it up with the blood that's on the mattress to see, did the blood soak through the sheet to the mattress, or were the things off of the bed and then someone or someone's were, on the bed. Like trying to figure out that pattern of blood that's on that mattress. And so my husband takes Detective Sudduth, the male detective, around, and he's showing him all of these areas of blood spatter, that there's blood spatter up by the ceiling. There's blood spatter as if Brandon had been hit on the bed and the blood is going down. My husband said it looked like someone was on top of him, hitting him, causing blood spatter to go down the wall. And you think about it, it's not practical, for them to say these wounds are self-inflicted. How would you hit yourself to make your own blood spatter go down a wall? That doesn't make any sense. So another thing, they were saying a lot of the blood was that he aspirated it, like coughing. And one of the things that, I mentioned that if you look at the head print, that the blood spray is actually coming out of the back of his head. Yeah. And he could not aspirate that. The blood on his face was dried. So, they can't say that he was aspirating it, because otherwise it would have been maybe on his face or it would have went forward, but the blood spray was going out of the back. And in the crime scene notes, the officers on the scene said that the blood on his face was dried when they found him. The blood under his head was wet. And they said he appeared to be bleeding from his head. Yeah. Not from his face, not from coughing blood, but they said he appeared to be bleeding from his head. So it just seems like they just really they weren't very thorough. They should have taken the mattress, they should have taken the shower curtain, the whole other shower curtain in the other bathroom, the shower curtain and shower rod were completely missing. There was blood cleanup, and my husband pointed it out, and Detective Sudduth said that he would have CSI come back over and check and see if there was blood cleanup. And they checked in that spot, and he did confirm that there had been blood cleaned up in the hallway. And then I go back to this and I think, so Brandon never made it out of the bedroom. That's where they found him. That's where, that's where he was. If he had cleaned that blood off the walls, if he had cleaned the hallway, those cleaning products should be right there.
Yeah.
And they weren't there. There was no spray. There was in that whole, later when I get the crime scene photos, I'm going through everything. There's no spray by him for him to be doing that. But that spray bottle was in the truck with blood on it.
Yes. And also, the closet door, well, the closet, not the regular closet, but there was a second closet in his room that had, what is it, the water heater?
Yes.
There was clearly some sort of part of the altercation kind of happened in there. And there's footprints, sneaker prints on the door. And those sneakers are found in his car.
Yes. So those sneakers were in Brandon's truck, and I brought them in the house and I had set them on a shelf, and they're red. They just really remind, every time I would walk by, they would remind me of Brandon. And I kept thinking, we couldn't understand why didn't they do anything with that footprint? There was a footprint on that closet door. There was blood spatter on that closet door. There was blood in that closet. They didn't really even take crime scene photos of the blood in the closet. So we were just feeling like there were so many things, so many areas that should have been looked at that weren't. And that shoe print just bothered me. And one day I thought, because we were like, was it a paramedic? Was the person that murdered him? Whose shoe print could that be? And so I got the shoe, I looked at the bottom of the sole, and there are these like three-dimensional boxes on the shoe print, and it matched perfectly with that shoe. And then I realized Brandon had those shoes on when he was attacked, and someone had taken those shoes off and put them in the truck. And then I've also thought, so where are his clothes? Because as bad as his head was bleeding, the deep cut on his wrist, where was his clothing? They didn't take any clothing into evidence. This female had clothing there. I looked closer. She asked to have her jeans back, and those jeans look like they're soaked with blood. They're American Eagle jeans. I know those weren't Brandon's.
Wow.
So another thing was there was in the crime scene photos, there's a bra. The bra, if you look closely, it's a gray bra. The bra strap is bleached. If you get bleach on something, a lot of times it turns orange, but you can tell it's been in bleach, and that's how it was. You can see that the bra is bleached. Over by the window in the living room, there was stuff just dumped out everywhere where he had been packing to move.
Yep.
I know a lot of what was in those boxes I helped him pack. There were shoes and clothing that I remember packing up that ended up being dumped out. Stuff was just dumped out everywhere.
So do you think that was, some of this was almost like a staging of the crime scene?
I've thought that. Because why would boxes that were in the living room end up dumped out in the bedroom? So I kind of thought that it was made to look like that, or someone was looking for something and just dumping the boxes out, one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the window, there's a pair of sweatpants, and there's spots of bleach on those sweatpants.
Oh, wow.
And the bleach. So I'm looking in the crime scene photos, and I remember when we had went in and we were starting to go through his things. Another thing is that we found were these crystals in that hallway bathroom, and we were like, what are these crystals? Like, it almost looked like some kind of like bath salts or something. Well, then we get crime scene photos. There had been a bottle of Walmart brand bleach in that bathroom, and come to find out, bleach turns to crystals.
Yeah.
And it only takes 24 hours for the bleach to turn into crystals. And to me, you know, I just don't see how they didn't like put this together, that you go into where someone's beaten, there's blood being washed off the walls. It's confirmed that blood was cleaned up in the hallway, and the hallway bathroom, there's a bottle of bleach, and everything's been cleaned out of this bathroom,
Yeah,
except cleaning products. And it should have made them look further. It should have made them, you know, use more luminol, find out where all the blood had been, how much cleanup there had been.
yeah,
And later on, then and months had went by, because I had a lot on my plate. I mean, you know, they have a whole department. They have resources to call in. There are the people that are experienced in this stuff. And, you know, I'm just a mom.
yeah.
And I'm trying to piece all this together. But I go out to his truck one day, and I'm just feeling like I'm missing something. I just kept feeling like I was missing something. And I happened to pull out a floor mat, and the sun was just really golden that day, and it just shone down on this mat. And what I had thought before was just something possibly like spilled, I could tell it was blood. You know, the sun is like showing that it was blood on the mat. And then once I saw that, I started looking everywhere. I started looking under the seats. I start finding blood all over the place. I find a debit card on the passenger side with blood on it. And before Brandon, right before Brandon came home from the work project, he was in Chicago, and he told me on the phone, he said, something weird is going on with my bank account, and the ATM took my debit card. Well, after he passed, we kept finding debit cards. He got like new debit cards in the mail. There was one under the seat. There was one in his wallet. One of the crime scene photos show his wallet. There's this opening where you can use a thumb to like slide your cards out. And the stuff was like blood soaked, but this wallet particularly, it didn't look blood soaked. It looked like pure blood, like someone had blood on their hands, taking something out of that wallet. And I think it could have been that card, because that card had blood on it.
Yeah.
And I just keep finding blood everywhere. It was on the console, it was on the post, it was up in the seatbelt holder. If you pull the seatbelt out, there was like a place where a bloody hand would be.
Yeah.
And then I realized the carpets had been cleaned, and that truck was fairly new. There would be no reason to clean the carpets of that truck. And then also there was a can of car upholstery cleaner, and that can of carpet cleaner had blood on it. There was a bucket of car care items, and the handle on the bucket had little specks that you could tell was blood. And inside the bucket is multiple products, but the only thing used out of that bucket was the interior cleaning. And the strange thing is, it was like trash had been dumped in his truck, And I
Yeah.
was like, why would you clean your carpets and dump a bunch of trash? Why would you only wipe everything down? The truck had been wiped down to wipe down any fingerprints. The navigation system had been wiped clean. You know, I keep the things that were found in his apartment. I keep finding blood. I keep finding parts of blood, and they were areas that they didn't check for blood to see where blood had been cleaned up. I believe, you know, this is how they can put together what happened.
Yeah.
Brandon never made it out of the bedrooms, so where are the cleaning products? Like this, it couldn't have went down the way that they said. And I, just like I said, I keep finding things. The pots and pans in the sink have blood on them. Yeah. So because we had just kind of like boxed a few of those up and never really did anything with them. But yeah, so the pots and pans had blood on them. I'm looking through, like in the truck, they did a search warrant for the truck. They're taking crime scene photos in the truck. There's no trail of blood from where Brandon was coming out to the truck, but there's bloody wet papers in the console of the truck with the packaging for air freshener on top of it. And it's like, okay, so if there's no trail of blood, how did those wet papers get in the truck? And another thing that's really puzzling is, like, I feel like whoever was there and doing this had just left, because it had been 100 degrees and it had been really hot. Those papers were still wet. You can see in the crime scene photo that the papers are so wet, they're like curled over and like stuck together. They're not like crisp papers. They are wet.
So the lack of investigation in his apartment and more on the female detective when she shows up to the scene, what is her attitude towards what her theory of what happened to Brandon?
Right away, Detective Johnson had her theories of how Brandon had took drugs and how he self-inflicted these wounds. Even though she could have easily checked hospital records to find out about drug tests or anything like that, which had come back negative. There were no drugs. He didn't respond to Narcan, which is an indication to rule out certain kind of drugs. They did urine drug tests. They did blood drug tests. There were no drugs in his system.
The only thing was the Benadryl or the sleep aid. That's the only thing that was showing in his system was that.
Yes, were the sleep aids, exactly. Now, Brandon had, he had low testosterone, and he was on injectable HCG, which is the precursor to testosterone. And we have thought that maybe, you know, that stemmed from his time in the Navy working on the nuclear reactor. We tried to research that a little bit to see, you know, if that was why that he was on it. I did talk to the doctor that prescribed that. Brandon was a good patient. He did his blood test to keep his levels, you know, within range, because they won't prescribe it without that. So we checked that out thoroughly. And he did have that.
Was that showing in his system?
No, nothing showed. Nothing came up like any out of range.
Just so it was just the sleep aid.
That was the only thing that showed up.
And the female cop, she said that at first she was saying she thought he was on meth.
Yes. And I think it was just because she saw syringes and just, you know, came up with this theory, oh, he's did meth and did this to himself. But although she, she really wasn't the one that came to the hospital, she didn't see the injuries, she was just kind of projecting what she thought. The thermostat was set down very low, and she said people on meth get really hot and they will turn the air conditioning down low. And I told her, no, Brandon always kept it really cold in his apartment. It was always like 60, 62. That was his normal because of his hormone condition, and probably also because of the poisoning. I would say that also like affected him.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, no, he was on medication for his hormones. And we even picked up, the FedEx had just tried to deliver. He didn't answer the door. And that was on Wednesday. We showed them the FedEx of the medication. The crime scene photos show them holding up a bag of syringes with the prescription number and the doctor's name on them. But yet she's trying to say that he did a drug. And I told her, that I had spent time with him. I knew his behavior and that he wasn't on drugs. And so I feel like in a way they were also just very lazy about the investigation. Maybe they're like just waiting for this toxicology. And something that really upset me was there was a girl that felt like she had been followed. She felt like her vehicle had been marked. She felt like her vehicle had been marked, and they called the police. The police come and check surveillance right there. They spend all that time, but yet a crime wasn't proven. And here my son was murdered, and they had many ways that they could have checked surveillance. There were Walmart bags, gas station bags, there were receipts. They could have looked at where he had been. They could have checked records, and they wait until I really complain, and by then it's too late.
Yeah.
And the little bit that they did ask if there was any surveillance had already been gone. And in fact, I was the one, I noticed a charge on, or a couple of different charges on his debit card. And I was the one going to these places asking, do you have surveillance? And it was something they really didn't even attempt to check into.
And there's a charge on his card for food, and the amount, you spoke to the manager, right? And the amount was for 2 meals, basically.
Yes, my daughter and I sat in the food court of this little mall, and the amount for the food was $17. And we, just calculated like the maximum amount of food, and we could not come up with $17 for one person. But when we calculated, it was like one of the like kind of an Asian bistro, and so similar, like where you get the entrees and then the side type of thing.
Yeah.
And we calculated 2 meals and came up with very close to that amount.
Yeah. So most likely he was with somebody, or somebody was with somebody else pretending to
using his card. Yes. And I know when I will say this, that when I mentioned to this female that we were checking into surveillance at the mall, she was very concerned about that.
That's interesting.
She would ask me, she would follow up, like, did you find anything out about that? So she was concerned about that, if anything was found. But it was, it was too late. It was just something that
and that's just like police work. That was easy stuff for them to gather,
Yeah, I felt like that they were looking for ways to blame him. I would just, I would feel like they just weren't really looking into this, but I didn't really know a lot also about how investigations work. But I would feel like, why aren't they, when we were cleaning the apartment, I would feel like, why aren't they knocking on the doors, like asking people like who saw something, you know, they didn't do things like that. There ended up being a witness that saw someone arguing with Brandon, someone they could have tried to talk to. That would have been the last person to see Brandon alive, like talking to him. What were they talking about? And they didn't even try to find out who this was. And when they talked to this witness, they were actually checking on car seats for that person's children in their vehicle, and not even asking. Here they are at a homicide victim's apartment, and they're not even asking the neighbors. They're checking on car seats instead. And this person just happened to volunteer this information to say, by the way, I saw that guy arguing with someone.
Yeah. During research for this interview, the crime rate in his area is really, really high. I live in a small town, and my town actually has, the population is a little slightly larger than his city, and the crime rate, granted different regions, different places, was like, the difference was so shocking. And we found numerous posts and articles saying that the crime rate was really high, that there was statistics saying that, I can't remember if it was there was a D rating for the crime rate,
Well,
because it was so high. And also that they were saying that people's houses were being broken into. And one of the things that we found odd in our research was that usually when crime rate is really, really high, the odd thing is there wasn't a lot of murders. And when there's a lot of crime, there's usually more murders. And nothing, like, it was a short little page that said the unsolved crimes, unsolved murders, and people missing. It might have been like 5 people. And we were shocked with having the crime so high that there weren't more murders.
Right.
And that makes you wonder if there are many people that were in Brandon's situation that were murdered, that they're just sweeping it under the rug, calling it a suicide or a drug overdose or whatever, and it's actually a murder.
Yes, this is something that if you go on Brandon's page and you read through the comments, you will find several people that say that they've had a family member murdered and nothing was done. There was another man, the details, just don't have those in front of me, but there was a man murdered, and they just really, they don't seem to do like really active investigations.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people are telling me here in this county that they've had similar experiences. And to me, when you think about that, if you're sending out the message that if you commit murder, we're not really going to look into it, you're just going to have more murder. You're giving people the green light to commit murders, and also to let murderers know they can do it again, because they're really not even going to be investigated. I mean, with the police, I actually sent recorded audio of people with that female with guilty knowledge, and they did nothing with it.
It's like you're handing them stuff, and it's just like
spoon feeding them the clues that they had, that they were at the crime scene. They were in the vehicle and they saw bloody papers, and they don't stop to think, well, there's no blood trail. The
how did these
ER
papers
doctor
get,
said,
how do these papers get bloody if there's no droplet
blood trail? And the ER doctor saying that he had been down for days. It's 100 degrees outside. The papers should have been dry. Why were the papers still wet?
Yeah. So we're going to end this portion. Make sure you check back. I am Mizzy, and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world.